The 6000 series is rack-mounted control equipment that delivers video content and graphics to Daktronics LED displays. Both the DI and the VP have a flexible form factor design with components that can be arranged in various configurations. In this training, we'll be looking at the configuration menu, specifically the options for test patterns. Test patterns provide an easily available means of quickly checking the modules on the display for performance. In the case of the VP6000, test patterns can be used when the real SDI video inputs are not present yet, so you can simulate how the rest of the compositing hardware will function once those inputs are available. Let me explain this a bit, as it can be somewhat confusing. We can insert a test pattern on an input, which will run the pattern through all the hardware. If the display is configured to show inputs on different sections, it will place the test pattern on the appropriate section. In this example, the SDI input 1 was selected from the drop-down and is seen playing on just the section of display assigned to that input. On the other hand, the test pattern can be started on an output, which bypasses all the hardware upstream of it, meaning it skips the input card and compositing card processing. Here's a scenario for testing. If a technician wanted to test that the full processing path has been configured properly at site, but didn't have the SDI inputs available at site, as we may be setting up our equipment before any third-party video equipment feeds are ready, they should run a test pattern on the desired input and not just on the output. Running the test pattern on the input and verifying it looks good would have verified things were configured properly and should work whenever the real SDI input feed gets set up and hooked up at site, which may be done by a non-Daktronics person. If the technician would have just ran the test pattern on the output, it may have hid configuration issues pertaining to the input processing path, since it bypasses all of that. That could lead to the tech leaving site thinking things are configured properly because, hey, the board lit up, only to have another service call if the real SDI input feed isn't displaying right. Overall, there are distinct use cases for each test pattern for input and output. The moral of this story? Test patterns on inputs test the full processing pipeline and can go to sections of the display assigned to the specific SDI input. Test patterns on outputs do not test the full processing path, as they get sent right to the display and will cover the entire display. Different test patterns may be chosen depending on what your goal is. Let's take a look at how to create a test pattern in the main user interface. From the main menu, select the test pattern option. This will open the test pattern window and allow you to click on the Add button. Choose where the test pattern is inserted in the signal path from the drop-down. The test pattern can be used to override an input or override an output. If overriding an output, set the output brightness with the slider. The default brightness is set at 25%. Next, select the desired test pattern from the drop-down list. Then you will configure the pattern. You can add, change, or delete a color. All on. Select this pattern to show all modules as one solid color. All on rotate. This pattern shows all modules as a solid color rotating through a sequence of different colors. You can select which colors to display and change the order they appear in. Bouncing box. A moving box will bounce back and forth over the display. You can choose the color and size of the box. Adjust the start angle and speed to make the test useful for different display sizes. Technicians often use this pattern to test the translation table. If the box bounces off the screen, there is a problem. Diagonal lines. Scrolling diagonal lines moving across the display from left to right. Choose the line color as either RGB or white. Set smoothing on or off to enable or disable anti-aliasing. Grid, a crosshatch pattern on the display. This pattern is used to check and calibrate centering, aspect ratio, convergence, and both vertical and horizontal linearity. Choose the grid size to match the module size and select a color. Image. Click the Choose Image button to show an uploaded image on the display. After choosing the image, its placement on the display is shown as a preview. Note that images smaller than the display size for output test patterns will be placed in the top left corner and the rest of the frame will be black. Images larger than the display size will get cropped down. Module ID Grid. This pattern shows the number sequence of each display module. Use this pattern to check that the modules are in the correct order and verify the translation table and connections. Match the grid size to the module size. Module Locator Grid. This pattern will show an alternating red and green number pattern. Red indicates the row, and green indicates the column of each module in the display. Use this pattern to locate a specific module that may need troubleshooting. Adjusting the hold time will change how fast the row and column numbers alternate. Standard Video Pattern. To check the chroma and luminance levels for color calibration against a standard pattern, use this test pattern. It contains 4 standard video test patterns. Wand. This pattern shows a line moving across the display horizontally or vertically. This pattern is used to see if there are any issues with seaming or tearing. Choose the thickness of the line in pixels and the speed that the line moves across the display when creating this pattern. Click Create to run the test pattern. The test pattern will play until manually stopped. To stop the test pattern, click the X in the upper right corner of the tile or within the test pattern window and select Delete. Daktronics customers wanting more information on the 6000 series may search our online knowledge base at www.daktronics.com/support. In the search bar, enter 6000 plus the feature you want more information on and click the search button.